90 Minutes in Africa, which takes a look at African issues and how global news affects the continent of Africa. I'm your host, Bo Elvis. We are broadcasting from Yaoundé in Central Africa. In today's edition of the program 90 Minutes in Africa, we are going to be taking a look at the recent viral statement which was made by various African leaders, especially President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa and President William Ruto Samoei of Kenya, when they were having a discussion on how to finance global projects. They made a statement that we are not beggars, treat us as equals. That is a statement that was made by Cyril Ramaphosa to Western nations. He was having a tete-a-tete discussion with President Emmanuel Macron of France. So today we are basically going to be trying to understand how true is this assertion made by President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa at a time when the continent has been accused of being beggars. The continent's leaders have been accused of being beggars, especially at the time when we know that Africa has enormous potentials which sometimes are not used for the development of their people, at the time when even the headquarters of the African Union was constructed and furnished 100% by China, at the time when most African leaders rushed to Russia, rushed to Ukraine to try to negotiate an end to the war, sometimes not necessarily because of the peace aspect, but most of the time because they are concerned about the importation of wheat and cereals to the continent of Africa, when we have the most fertile soils in the world. So that is basically the topic we are going to be taking a look at in today's edition of the program with my guests who are already there. Ernest Akufo already is a consultant in this program 90 Minutes in Africa. Thank you for coming, sir.
It has always been a pleasure for me to be on panel,
Bo, to talk topical issues in Africa. I just hope that the viewers out there, by the end of the program, they must have gotten something. And I want to say good afternoon to my co-panelists.
Thank you, Ernest Akufo. It has really been long, and viewers were already writing messages asking where is Ernest Akufo. So we want to thank you so much for coming, sir. We want to use the opportunity to welcome Isidore Pakom, who is a political analyst, also a regular guest in this program. Thank you for coming, sir.
The pleasure is mine. I'm glad to be here once more, especially with a journalist who just received an award these days. I think that is a great issue to be here with him, with an elder man, Ernest Akufo, and of course televiewers. I will be glad to be here to the end and then give you what I think I can do best.
Thank you, Ernest Pakom. Time to welcome my brother and friend Boris Landry Kwekam. He's an award-winning journalist. He just backed an award for the continent of Africa, a UNESCO prize on reporting on artificial intelligence in the continent of Africa. So he did a documentary alongside other journalists from the continent of Africa.
Or the student journalist.
And he won the award. He is the publisher of Le Étudiant, a newspaper, and also so many other platforms. Thank you for coming to the program, Boris.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here today. I've heard about 90 Minutes Africa, and I'm very glad to be here for the very first time. And I hope to give my own my own type of approach in discussing what we have to discuss today.
Tell us more about the award you won.
So we won an award after reporting on artificial intelligence. It was a competition beating 10 African countries: Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Morocco, Tunisia, and all the rest. And then we were asked to produce, to report on the state of artificial intelligence in Cameroon. And the competition was organized by Université Bordeaux-Montaigne in partnership with the French Development Agency and UNESCO. So at the end of the day, we traveled to France to collect our award, and then we came and handed it over to the director of the Advanced School of Mass Communication.
Okay, can you tell us some of the difficulties you faced in producing the documentary you did, and were you really confident about yourself when you were submitting your work, or it came as a surprise?
First of all, we are students from the best journalism school in Central Africa. That's the Advanced School of Mass Communication. So when we decided to go in for the competition, we're quite confident. And also the second thing is that we faced a series of difficulties because, first of all, resources. We had to travel in about seven towns in Cameroon to make sure that we met with those startups, with those guys from Polytech and all the rest, dealing with artificial intelligence and all the rest. And you know, we also wanted to create awareness because people don't know about artificial intelligence and how it works. So that was it. It was a very nice experience.
Okay, about your newspaper, the newspaper Étudiant, can you tell us a little about it?
Journal Étudiant is a newspaper created when I was in level 1 at the Advanced School of Mass Communication. It was in 2019, and today we are 4 years on, and the experience is quite great. So it's a newspaper which concentrates on reporting on student-oriented activities.
Thank you. I think I'm so happy, and congratulations for the award you won.
Thank you.
I was so delighted also with the Advanced School of Mass Communication being my alma mater. And you know how I met you the first day when you came in. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is 90 Minutes in Africa, your Pan-African program that takes a look at issues affecting the continent of Africa. And we want to now move over to the United States of America to celebrate one of our regular guests in this program, Lumbi Merlambo, who also just won another award, ABLA and CNBC Africa Philanthropist of the Year award. She backed the award for the African continent, and we are going to hook up with her now to understand how she feels after winning this ABLA and CNBC Africa Philanthropist of the Year award. Lumbi Merlambo.
Thank you so much, 90 Minutes in Africa, for giving me the opportunity to come here and talk about how I feel about the award that I recently received. I feel, I never thought I would say this. I feel amazing, pretty amazing, in that it's incredible to receive such a huge honor, to be named the Philanthropist of the Year by ABLA and CNBC Africa. That is huge. That is huge. I have a hard time describing the feeling because it's just a nice thing. It's just a good feeling when somebody actually honors you for doing something out there, you know, for helping people. And I always say that I don't do this alone because I have like an army of people, not like an army, you know what I mean? I mean, I have like a lot of people that I work with that are in philanthropy who do all the work. We all work together, but they all work wherever they are. They're doing amazing things, and I'm happy. I'm happy that our work is being recognized, and I'm happy that the world is seeing what we're doing. And I'm hoping that more and more people can join us so we can all work together and achieve this a big mission, you know, to close the gender equality gap, to make sure that women and girls get out of poverty, and to make sure that they have water, clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. Because those things are important in life, especially for women and girls, so that they can go to school. So to be awarded this this philanthropist award, it's amazing. It's really amazing. I just don't know how to describe it other than to say that I'm very happy and I am very grateful. And I just want to say thank you to ABLA, CNBC, Forbes Africa. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone who believe in us, and to 90 Minutes in Africa as well. I want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and let you know exactly how I feel about this award, because it's a big award. And everybody that participated, in philanthropy we don't compete. In philanthropy we work together because we're all marching towards one common goal, for equitable life, to make sure that everybody has access, equal rights, equal access, and that we all have what's granted to everyone. No one person has more than the other, or no one person lives better than the other, and we're trying to make sure that everybody lives happily.
Lumbi Merlambo, before you leave us, we are so happy that you were able to win this award for the continent of Africa, and we also want to laud your effort in helping helping girls and women in the continent. But could you help us understand what it takes to do philanthropy? Someone like me or some of my guests in the studio who want to also get involved in philanthropy, do we need to be billionaires to be able to help others?
At the end of the day, it's about humanity. It's about what each of us are doing. What is your purpose in life? What is your purpose on earth? Everybody has a purpose. If you haven't found it, find it. You will know. You will find out that, you're not just here on planet Earth for no reason. You're here on planet Earth because you have a purpose and there's a reason. So I hope that there's nothing else that you can take away from here, from my appreciation of this award. Hope that you can take away the inspiration that everyone has a purpose, everyone is important, and everyone has value, and everyone plays a part in society. And you don't have to have money to help people. All you have to have is a heart. You have to really dig deep in your heart, and you'll find that there is love within you. Everybody has that inside them. If you don't have that, perhaps someone else has that. And you can ask them, and together we can join hands and close the gender equality gap and bring about happiness in everybody's lives, and live a happy life, equitable lives. So again, I just want to say thank you to Bo Elvis and 90 Minutes in Africa, and thanks everyone for believing in us. There's a lot of work to do. Please go to jbdondolo.org, jbdondolo.org. Make a difference. We need your help. So thank you so much.
We also want to thank you so much for being a regular panelist in this program, and we are happy. Today we have 2 award winners. Next time I'm sure we're going to be celebrating Enes Akufo, who is doing a very great job in the civil society.
Obviously, you see, Napoleon Bonaparte did say it, men are led by toys. Those awards which people get, you don't know the value until you have one. And when you don't pick one from the gutter, that's why you give value to it. Because if people like Tumfo, Barrister Nico Hele can be celebrating 170, 75 awards, they are not awards picked from the gutter. They are merited. So they must be celebrated. So I hear you guys.
Okay, you wanted to say something about the award? Celebrate the award winners?
No, of course, it is normal. When you achieve something, you should be awarded to, at least with reconnection.
Definitely.
So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, time for us now to dive into the topic of the day. We are not beggars. Treat us as equals. That was Ramaphosa's statement to President Emmanuel Macron alongside other leaders as they discussed how to finance the global economy. And Ramaphosa's statement has really become viral across the continent. It has been celebrated by many young people who now see in Ramaphosa a Pan-Africanist alongside William Ruto Samoy. They see in them Pan-Africanists who are ready to pick up the relay baton from Muammar Gaddafi, as well as Thomas Sankara and the rest, who have always been defending the interests of Africa at the world stage. Of course, not forgetting Robert Mugabe. So saying that we are not beggars means that President Cyril Ramaphosa is recognizing that Africa has nearly half of the world's gold. Africa has nearly 1/3 of all minerals that exist in the world. Africa produces almost 1 billion tons of minerals worth 40 billion US dollars. Africa produces 30% of world's minerals reserves. That is according to statistics from the United Nations. We have 12% of the world's oil. We have 8% of the world's natural gas reserves, 40% of the world's gold, 90% of world's chromium and platinum. Not forgetting tantalum, which is of course found in mobile phones and laptops. Not forgetting too also lithium that is used to make mobile phone batteries. All of these resources are found in the continent of Africa. But most of the time, when we watch the international media, we see how the continent of Africa is described sometimes as war-torn Africa, poverty-struck Africa, and so on and so forth. It took this particular confrontation with President Emmanuel Macron of France for Cyril Ramaphosa to remind the West that we are not beggars. Ernest Akufo, how did you feel when you listened to that declaration of President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, when I got it, I had a chill on me. I had ghost pimple. I said to myself, hey, apparently we're getting up from slumber. I mean, we Africans, we the African leaders, because at each time, you see the African leaders are invited over there. Either they are going to the United States, either they are going to France for summits. And I begin to ask myself, why must Africa move to Europe or to America? Why can Europe not equally move to Africa? But gradually, the African leaders are beginning to realize that they give with the right hand, it is taken with the left hand, and then in turn again, what they has been taken from them is lent out to them. They borrow it at cutthroat prices and then plow again to pay back on their money, on their resources. Take the example, let me take the example of Cameroon. Timber, of recent, the President of the Republic signed a decree, I don't know what it was voted at the assembly, that timber will no more be exploited at the raw stage, that it must be transformed, because from the transformation there will be jobs created. The raw material gotten from the timber which has been transformed will be used to do other things, and the cost of the transformation here will be more cheaper, a little cheaper than when it is exported and they re-import it into Cameroon. When President Ramaphosa says we are not beggars, it has a lot of meaning. Not beggars means he outrightly tells the West, tells the Americans, because he used that opportunity to place the tomcat. Now the tire is on the tire is on the tar. It means we can now go on the same footing. There is nothing like you people are up there, we are down there. We can go hand in glove. This is meaningful, and I want to think that William Hutu did equally say it, because nobody makes you what you are, but you make yourself what you want to be. Nobody makes you what you are, but you make yourself what you want to be. If you want to be the underdog of the society, people will take you as one. If you want to be up there, people will equally take you as one. So that was a statement, a strong affirmation. I think it is high time, because Elvis, formerly I used to think that African leaders were handpicked. Yes, but from the declarations of Paris, I will want to fervently believe, but with some doubts still. Why? Because when you look at the pronouncements, they were coming from leaders, African leaders of the English expression.
Definitely.
African leaders of the English expression. I very much doubt whether African leaders of the French expression can make such vehement declarations.
But Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of Congo
he did make. You know, there is a new world order that is coming up now. China and Russia are coming into Africa, and forcefully. So much so that Africa is no more the preserve of Europe, and more especially France. So I think when you get such declarations, it is time some of the African leaders who thought that they must always lean somewhere. Please, I don't want to have some stigma on some particular nations. You always get me taking it the global way. So Africa must wake up. The Gaddafis, they failed. The Nkrumahs along the line, nobody believed them. The Sankaras, nobody believed them. The Mugabes, nobody believed them. Are these a new breed of African leaders onto whom Africans can look up to? Is the $1 billion question.
Thank you, Ernest Akufo. I want to say to you that we are going to come back to the statements. What we are trying to do is just to understand the immediate reaction, the immediate feeling after getting the statement, because after this we are going to play the full statements so that we come back with detailed analysis. So what came to your mind when you heard President Cyril Ramaphosa tell the world stage that we are not beggars? Is it just enough, you know, if I'm a beggar and then I stand at the world stage and I say I'm not a beggar, does that make me not a beggar?
It is of course a paradoxical reality. It is too frightening, too disheartening and ego-provoking to hear from Cyril Ramaphosa to say that we are not beggars. What was he doing in France? What was Cyril doing in France with his grandson, Macron? If we are not beggars, why did he go to Russia and Ukraine to mediate for peace? If we are not beggars, they went to follow up to Russia and Ukraine because they wanted Russia and Ukraine to dish out or deport Syria like rice, flour to Africa. Meanwhile, Africa is a very fertile land. They went there because of that. That is one of the statements outlined to Putin, that they should deport this thing to Africa because the price of basic commodities are high. Is he not a beggar? He came back and went to France. That is one development. The resources are leaving Africa and you are going back to France to tell the French man that we are not beggars. It's just like somebody tell you that God does not exist. You feel us affirm that there is God and then contradict himself that that person who is called God is and does not exist. It is frightening. Let me come back in Central Africa, where our reserve for CFA France, where is it found? Is it not in France? And they were on behalf of Africa. Denis Sassou Nguesso was in France to also debunk allegations. Don't you see hypocrisy? I see they are placing Africa in a dilemma. They are putting us in a very, in a very hot pedestal, if not a high pedigree. They are beggars. They should affirm it. If we are not beggars, we should use our resources, transform them here. Let the white man come and buy them here. If we are not beggars, let us keep our timber, as Brother Akufo just said. We should transform it here and we should be able to market it out. If we are not beggars, the Chinese build the Cameroon National Assembly. If we are not beggars, do we have technicians? Don't we have polytechnics? If we are not beggars, the AU structure was still built by Chinese. If we are not beggars, don't we like technicians? The Wuri Bridge was built by France and China. Don't we have technicians if we are not beggars? In fact, we should be honest to ourselves. We should be honest to ourselves. I am not saying that we should wipe out the mentality that we cannot stand on ourselves. First of all, consider that mentality that we are not beggars. It is so contradictory. It made me to go back to what Franz Fanon quoted Africans as the wretched of the earth. I don't see the wretched of the earth in terms of resources. I see the wretched of the earth in terms of mentality. So let the African leaders sit up. If we are not beggars, we say, France, we are doing our things here. If you want anything for us to do it, come here. So that all the resources are from us, going to France and coming back to us at very expensive prices. So we should be honest. We stop deceiving Africans in hypocritical way because elections are coming up. The elections are coming up. When they make like that, we go to the state and say, our president has said it, our president has said it, and at the end of the day, we vote him say, these are true Pan-Africans. Those are hypocrites. They go to France to beg.
Okay, Isidore Pacom, let's get a perspective of Boris Landry Kwekam before we get the excerpts so that we get from the horse's own mouth what he meant. Now, Boris, when you get that statement by Cyril Ramaphosa when he said, we are not beggars, what came to your mind?
I think that I was really disappointed. He was not supposed to say that. That's what I think. My analysis is they will be in direct line with what he said. We are beggars. Because in that very same speech that you will listen to, he said that Africans, the leaders from that summit, should come together and finance a project in Congo.
With all the resources
we have in Africa.
That is it.
We are beggars. But it's not because you go on the world stage and then you show off your ego that you are much more different from other African countries or from other African leaders. Because the truth is, elections are coming up, like he said. We need to, Macky Sall, for instance, cannot make such a statement because he's on hot fire.
Yeah.
He cannot make such a statement. Our president cannot make such a statement. He said the president from Congo made,
he spoke about the millions that was billions that were supposed to send to Africa, that were supposed to send as aid, but which was not.
Even Cyril Ramaphosa said it, that previous summits have been organized, but no money has ever come out from no practical, like he has never been.
It's like I tell you that, Boris, I'm not a beggar, but please give me 500,000. Let me pay.
That is the same thing. We are putting Africa on a very. It's not nice. It's not nice. It's not a very nice perspective from Africa. Even if you need help, you're not supposed to go and show off your ego. When you need help, you're supposed to be humble. And then the problem is not being beggars or not. The problem is, how should we stand up? It's not by speaking out. It's by, like, in the local way, definitely. In our countries, we must supposed to take a series of measures that will push us not to be beggars in 20 years. In 20 years, we are still beggars. And Cyril Ramaphosa is making that statement because of the BRICS. Because of the BRICS. He's relying on Russia. William Ruto is relying on what?
Even though South Africa has said that they are new.
We, Cameroon, Senegal, Mali, we rely on these European countries for the moment. So if he should say South Africa is not a begging country. South Africans are not beggars. But please leave other African countries alone. We still need help. We are humble. And the truth is, leadership skills or leadership, when you compare from the 1960s to 2022, at least we're evolving. And why do I say so? Because when the COVID came, COVID didn't kill us. We thought that COVID would be
exterminate,
but we are still alive.
Okay,
and these are our small scientists. Prove that they could do something. Prove that they could manage such a pandemic.
I don't even want to call them small scientists because we have natural scientists.
Definitely.
Like the Reverend
Yeah.
We did our natural stuff and it was working.
and it was exported.
And they're coming beyond by and they're blocking that it's not come to the World Health Organization.
Yes.
Okay.
More of this. Even when you want to sell something, if you want to sell this traditional stuff to a foreign country, you are not going to go with your ego. You'll be humble enough. Cyril Ramaphosa is not humble. That's what I think.
Thank you, Boris Landry Ekwekam. We now call on our producer, Romuald Ngacha, to get to the machines now. Of course, where we got to the media center to get some excerpts of Cyril Ramaphosa. We're going to get his first excerpt where he's articulating Africa's position so that we can get the facts alongside our viewers, and then we are going to come back for analysis.
But I think what is important to many of us is that there should be solid consensus on the reform of the financial architecture of the world. Because without that reform, the dreams and the objectives that we have to address our challenges will not be realized. And those reforms need to touch on a whole range of issues. Mr. Mo Ibrahim yesterday even spoke about something that we may think is insignificant, that the boards of directors of your multilateral institutions are not made up of independent directors. They are largely internal people or shareholders. So that in itself, for us, it's an important reform. We also need to look at the distribution of the special drawing rights. I find it a bit difficult to be told that this is set in the rules and it will forever be like that, and that it's either you get 0 or you get 34 billion. In our view, this is not a zero-sum game. It's a game where we all need to be dealt with equity in an equitable manner. And there is a need for reform in that regard as well. And the other important thing for this to happen, it will help us not to participate as unequal cousins in these institutions. It will help us to participate fully, and so that we don't have a sense that we are beggars, that we are being dealt with out of generosity. I think it's important in the new era that the world is in now that there should be a good measure of equality among sovereign nations. You know, recently 7 African countries decided to go and put a call for peace to Ukraine and to Russia. And we raised a number of issues. Zambia was represented, Comoros was represented, Republic of Congo was represented, Senegal was represented, Uganda, as well as South Africa. So we were all represented, and Egypt as well. So we were all at one, that even as we were going to address an issue of the war which has had a negative impact on the African continent, which is the rise in prices for food, rise in prices for fertilizers, we were clear that we are not going there as beggars. We are not going to ask for a favor to both Ukraine and Russia. We were going there to say, open up the Black Sea Channel so that the grains and the fertilizers should go into the world market. So we were not on a begging mission, even as we are in great need as a continent and all that. That should go to demonstrate that Africa should never be seen as a continent that needs generosity. We want to be treated as equals. Even in the multilateral institutions, we want to be treated as equals. And if our equity is at a low ebb, there must be ways in which that can be addressed. To us, this is very important. Our sovereignty is one of the things that we hold on dearly to. And we demonstrated that very clearly to both President Zelensky and to President Putin when it came to this issue, even as there were suggestions that, yes, we can donate this, we can donate that. We said, we want you to release these grains and fertilizers to the world market so that the world can trade in these commodities and other issues we can handle in a different way. I wanted to make that point so that it should be understood where Africa has evolved up to. We want to be key players on the world stage, want to be key players even in the financial markets and in the MDBs.
Okay, Isidore Pacom, you listen to what he said, what President Cyril Ramaphosa said. No, it's not turn to talk. It's Ernest Akufo's turn to talk. Ernest Akufo, I'm laughing because Cyril Ramaphosa said, we are not beggars, but we are coming to tell you to open up and facilitate the transportation of cereals to the continent of Africa. But please, we are not beggars. What do you think about this contradiction?
It's a little bit, there is a little bit of cacophony there, you know, because apparently President Ramaphosa was talking as if he were talking to children in the kindergarten, right? Yeah, because when you listen to him, he's consistently inconsistent. I want to say he's politicking because when you say you went to Russia not to go and beg, but you go and tell them to open the way for grains and fertilizers to come into Africa, we can't produce all of those things in Africa. South Africa can do, Nigeria can do, Cameroon can do. Each of the African continent countries has the climate for all of what we import from Europe and America. When we talk of the AGOA market, what is coming from there that we cannot have in Africa? When we talk of economic partnership with the European markets, What do they produce that we cannot produce? Rather, they do dumping in our own backyard, and we cannot export, and consequently, our balance of payment and terms of trade with them can never balance. So, my brother did say he was being overzealous. Well, I may be paraphrasing with too high words, but I want to think that if some other countries can stand up to boast, to vehemently say we are not beggars. Well, South Africa is the continent's first economy. Well, I may be contradictory because there is Nigeria, there is South Africa. I'm sorry to say, the two giants in Africa. I think from that standpoint, we can say President Ramaphosa has the right to say they are not beggars. Yes, I'll take it from that perspective, because like an economic giant in the continent of Africa, you can boastfully say we are not beggars. But when you take it from the standpoint of some other African countries who are barely they are limping at times. No, please, I said I'll avoid any polemics here. Yeah, they are limping, and please, the limping doesn't mean they don't have the resources. They have the manpower, they have the natural resources. Elvis did name all of the resources we have in Africa. I think there were about 9 or 10, right? Natural resources. And not to talk of the manpower. When you go to America, when you go to Europe, let's come back to football. When we watch the Qatar games, I can say 2/3 of the players at the World Cup which just ended in Qatar were blacks, were Africans, true or false? Well, if we take it only for sports, then transform it into other domains. Our fathers and forefathers were taken to Europe, to America like slaves. They are the ones who have made America, Europe, what it has become today. On that standpoint, Ramaphosa has a point. But on another note, those whom Elvis considered as limping and who want to be limping, I tell you, you make yourself what you are, because if you want to be the underdog of the society, people take you as the underdog. So that statement, which I got my two other panelists, they were trying to contradict and say Ramaphosa was maybe contradicting himself. I would say it is like telling the other African countries who have always and often thought that it is only the Western past that can help them build. What we need in Africa is concerted action. We saw what happened with Muammar Gaddafi when he needed to build a strong African Union. Was there any support for him? People never supported him. But today we cry over spilled milk. That is my standpoint on saying that President Ramaphosa has a right to say we are not beggars. It is like a fervent call, a call to African leaders, some of them who are lingering behind. Please, can we wake up? Can we pick up this challenge? Can we transform our raw materials? Can we produce the fertilizers with which we use? Can we produce the wheat? Thank God, wheat is being produced in somewhere in Cameroon, around Kambi, do somewhere there. Can we enhance that and see that production be mechanized, so that we conquer what we are suffering, so that our leaders don't get back to Russia, to Ukraine to say, we're begging, please, can you stop the war because we don't have wheat to produce bread? Can you stop the war because we don't have fertilizers to cultivate our crops? I think that is where we should stand up and say enough is enough.
Thank you, Ernest Kufo. Ladies and gentlemen, you can join the conversation, of course, by sending us a message about the topic. We are not beggars. Treat us as equals. How true is Cyril Ramaphosa's declaration to the West? It's true that in some African countries we call him Ramaphosa, but most South Africans also call it Ramaphosa. It all depends. So Cyril Ramaphosa, you are correct. He says that, please, we are not beggars. Do something so that we don't have the sense that we are beggars. And Isidon Pacom, we know that in Africa we bake bread we bake bread, yet we beg bread. And we understand that when it comes to begging, unless a beggar shakes off and irrevocably turns his back on his begging habit, he will forever remain a beggar.
Thank you. I am not in any way saying that Brother Ernest Akufo ideas are bad or that mine are the best, but I believe our ideas are different. When you want to say a state is a sovereignty from the excerpt, he says, what makes a state a sovereignty? The very first criteria, you should have a standing army. You have your army independent. The second thing, you have financial independence. I doubt if some African countries have that financial independence. I doubt if we have an independent military, because we have the African Union, AU, which to me is like a dog that does not even bark, talk less of biting. And now, what am I saying so? If you come to Africa, you will see UN keeping forces standing around Africa. You can cite Congo, you can cite Central Africa. For over 20 years, the soldiers have been there, the UN soldiers. Do we lack soldiers in the AU? Or can we form soldiers in the AU? We bring them to make an international organization that we are partially part of it to control us. And do you think that these forces are working for the interest of Africa to mediate for peace? Somebody said somewhere sometimes ago that Africa is the Harvard of terrorism. It means that these our soldiers are coming in to do what? They keep on looting and saying that they are mediating for peace, tapping our resources. I said this here last time, the UN forces or peacekeeping forces in Central Africa, which is not up to 25 million inhabitants. There will be there over 12,000 soldiers. What are they doing there for over 20 years? One, they are paying money to maintain those guys. They are tapping our resources and going with it. Why can't why can the AU not have a standing army to mediate on peace in Africa? Why can't they do that? And then we are saying that we are a sovereign state. In Cameroon, I use CFA francs, and the treasurer is a reserve. The CFA is a reserve currency in France, and I am telling that I am a sovereign state. I doubt if I should have a sovereignty, I should have my currency. If I have a sovereignty, my army should be independent without any infiltration. There cannot be anything in Africa without hearing that European Union have said this, African Union have said this, whether United Nations have said this, France have said that because they are colonial master and they want to keep on practicing neo-colonialism. They go out through the door and pass through the window. That we should say no. We have all that it takes to be able to produce our resource, our food. I cited here last time, in Megaga in the north, there is millet, they grow millet, they grow rice. In the south, in the east, cassava. When COVID-19 came in, you believe me that people use, since flour was not coming in, what do they use? We use potatoes, we use cassava and transform to bread. Why can't we continue with that process? Must we import? Why do we have all the resources and we keep on depending on people and saying that we are not beggars? To me, they should beg for us, from us, because France virtually have nothing. France has no forest, but believe me, it's the highest exporting timber company in the world. So we should be honest to ourselves that we have everything that it takes. If you go to Northwest, you have Ndop, you have Boo, they produce rice. Why are we still importing rice? Believe me, in 2022, they said it was over 70,000 tons of rice that were imported. How can we import about 70,000 tons in a fertile ground where we can produce our own? So we keep on importing, and then we have nothing to export. As Brother Akobo said, that the balance of payment will certainly experience what? A deficit.
Thank you. It's time for us to get the perspective of Boris Landry Kwekam. Boris, before you come in with your perspective after listening to Cyril Ramaphosa's speech, time for us to for me to also indicate some of the resources that we have here in Africa. Africa produces 63% of world's cobalt, which is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. You know too that there are some mineral resources that sometimes are not even taught in our educational system, but that are very important. We are talking here about tantalum, which is used in making mobile phones and laptops. the DRC and Rwanda are the world's largest producers of tantalum. That is, half of the world's tantalum comes from the DRC and Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't even think that we teach tantalum in African educational system. Now, coming back to petroleum, we have Nigeria, we have Angola, we have Algeria. Now, coming back to gold, in other top gold producing countries, we have Ghana, South Africa, and Mali. Now, coming back to lithium, I think I spoke about lithium.
Yeah, for producing batteries.
Lithium is used in the production of
phone batteries.
Alongside cobalt. I don't think we teach lithium in our educational system. We don't do that. So, you listen to Cyril Ramaphosa. Is he like trying to say that we are beggars, but please don't treat us as such?
I think that his requests are quite tangible, but he's not obliged to be so rude. That's what I think. So we live in a world whereby globalization is becoming something that we cannot fight. We need other partners. Globalization is complementary. This country, that's why you see the European Union. That's why that's what led to the creation of the African Union. Globalization means that I need you, you need me, and we exchange. And it's a win-win partnership. That's what globalization is all about. Accepting this reality. By so doing, do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa is accepting the reality? I don't think so. Right now, I think that when you are on such a global stage, you are supposed to ask for more cooperation. For more cooperation. He's asking for more cooperation, but using the wrong words. I don't think that saying that we are beggars, we are not beggars, was the right word he was supposed to use in that global stage. I think personally that if I was at his place, what I would do if I'm on the global stage, I will fight for the transfer of technology. That's the first thing we need. I will beg for more investors to come to Africa. Because what we need two things in this our country, or three things. We need education. We need a booming economy. And we need a change of mentality. And for as long as we are not changing that mentality locally, nothing will change. We will have nothing to offer. Because at the time you're a young entrepreneur, you have a small newspaper, and then you want to launch something, and then they are fighting you. A small newspaper. If you want, for instance, you will see in France, you will see a 20-year-old guy, he can go to the state, write an application, and then he's going to receive a small subvention, a small financial assistance to launch his business.
But here you must know somebody.
Here you must beg.
No matter how intelligent you are, you must know somebody.
You must beg. And for instance, why is South Africa not organizing this artificial intelligence competition for African countries to compete and travel to South Africa to receive the prize? Why should it be France? There are a series of things that we need to change locally. And I also would like to add that Pan-Africanism is not a scam. It is not a scam. It is an heritage we need to preserve, and that we need to really clearly identify who is a Pan-Africanist. By saying such a statement, by saying it on the world stage, is Cyril Ramaphosa a Pan-Africanist? I don't think so. Because we saw some leaders trying to put in some action. Some
Those
action.
are Pan-Africanists.
Yeah, some
Those
action. Implementing something concrete. What is South Africa doing to fight or to push back the problems we have in Africa? What is South Africa's contribution? So what is South Africa's contribution? Now we have, even among us Africans, we are still fighting. We have a Cameroonian entrepreneur who is suffering in South Africa. A Cameroonian entrepreneur, African entrepreneur. Why is that Cameroonian entrepreneur suffering in South Africa? Until the state of Cameroon has to take action for that entrepreneur not to.
And it's not yet resolved.
It's not yet resolved. Those are the problems we have in this our country, in this our African continent. Let's talk about those problems before going and acting pompous on the global stage.
Thank you, Boris Landry Quickham. After saying that we are not beggars, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa went ahead to also say, try to re-echo the statements that were made earlier on by Denis Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of Congo, which is a neighboring country to Cameroon here, whereby they had been promised some financial support in other summits, but the financial support never came, which made African countries to look like beggars. And then he submitted a Congo project, that is a project to provide electricity. He admitted that close to 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity, and because of that, he is calling on President Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders to see what they can do to help Africa finance a project to provide electricity to the continent of Africa, despite the numerous and the enormous resources we just cited here that are in the continent of Africa, giving the impression, of course, that we bake bread, yet we bake bread. Let's watch Cyril Ramaphosa once more.
I do, Mr. President Macron, want us to address another issue which to us is a bit of a negative. You will have heard President Sisi talking about the 100 billion that was promised in Paris. President Sassou Nguesso yesterday as well also spoke about it at the dinner. Now there is that issue that a number of the commitments that have been made have not really been fully lived up to. But before I get into details, let me immediately say that we recognize the many initiatives that have been put on the table, and a number of countries here have done so. Germany has gone out of the way to put a number of initiatives, and the US has also done a number of things. But there have been times when we felt like we were beggars. I played a key role as chair of the African Union during the COVID period. We felt like we were beggars when it came to vaccine availability, when we felt we needed access to vaccines, and the northern hemisphere countries had bought all the vaccines in the world and they were hogging them, and they didn't want to release them at the time when we needed them most. And we felt like we were begging, and at times it felt like they would just be droppings from the table, that yes, we will give you that and that. And let me tell you something that generated a lot of resentment. We resented that, and it got worse when we said we want to manufacture our own vaccines. And when we went to the WTO, there was a lot of resistance, enormous resistance. And we kept saying, what is more important, life or profits by your big pharmaceutical companies? And that too, I must tell you now, generated and deepened that disappointment and resentment on our part, because we felt like life in the northern hemisphere is much more important than life in the global south. And these are issues that need to be addressed. And I'm glad that we are all seated here like this, because we've got to get to the heart of these matters and address them. Now I come to promises that have been made. And Chancellor Scholz was saying, we've got to walk the talk. Yes, we want to see the talk being walked. President Sassou Nguesso yesterday said at the dinner, $100 billion was promised per year. And he was saying, I've never seen that. And many of us will testify that that $100 billion has never really been made available. And this should stand out as something that needs to be addressed. Because sometimes we sit at conferences like this and say, yes, we'll make this available, and we believe you. We believe you, but now the tire must hit the tar. we must now see action flowing from that. Now, I want to then talk about something very practical. President Sassou Nguesso raised it yesterday. He said he would be happy if flowing from this summit we do something very practical on the infrastructure side. Having said that 600 million people in Africa do not have electricity, and yet we've got all the resources to generate electricity, particularly the mighty Congo River, and that there have been plans to build a number of power stations that will generate, in my calculation, up to 70,000 megawatts. And he said, and I want to speak in support of this proposal, that to prove that these summits are not summits where we just talk, flowing from the Paris COP as well as others, let us now put money on the table and collectively say we are going to address this mega project. A mega project which will in the end generate electricity for up to 12, 15 African countries all at one go. And this is a project that I think the multilateral development banks here working together, the call that you've made, President Macron, can actually fund. And where, as we rise from this, we should be able to say the Inga Dam is now going to be developed into the Inga Power Station, the one that President Sassou Nguesso mentioned, and the next one as well. If we can do that, then we as Africans will now be convinced that these summits are really meaningful. We will now go home and say, you know what, it's worthwhile going to these summits, coming to Europe, and to listen to all the promises because they are willing to act on the promises.
That was once more Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa articulating his point again, saying that we are not beggars, but at the same time calling on world leaders to help the African continent finance the Congo River project, which is expected to generate electricity for at least 12 African countries, because according to Cyril Ramaphosa, at least 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity. Ernest Akufo, do you have the impression that our African leaders, now we have a leader from a French-speaking country too also speaking out, that is President Denis Sassou Nguesso, do you have the impression that probably they might be speaking out like this because the terms of the relationship with the West was not respected? That is $100 billion that was supposed to be sent to African countries every year. Maybe that is why they've decided to be speaking out like this. Is that your opinion?
Well, I want to buy the opinion because as President Ramaphosa did say that the terms were not respected, and it's like he is pleading for that money to be sent. Do you know one thing, Elvis? If he keeps repeating that we are not beggars, when somebody takes your thing away, when you want to get it, and then you vehemently tell the person that I am not a beggar, the person already knows, because the French had even openly admitted at one point in time that they owe Africa a lot. Yes, they've said it, they owe Africa a lot. So when he's speaking on that perspective that we are not beggars, and then he keeps talking about the money which is supposed to have been sent, he talks about that Africa has the capability to produce electricity to supply to 12 or 15 African countries, yet there is something lacking. My brother here did talk about technology. I want to say we think that technology is being given. Technology is never given. You steal technology. If you think that the Chinese will come to Africa and they are doing their plant at Menvele, at Makim, at Songlulu, and then you think that they will show you the plan how they do it. Normally they work at night. Within the day, they bring the material to the site. And then at night, when the Africans or the Cameroonians or the Nigerians or the Kenyans, they go to bed, that is where they see the fight, the Chinese, they go out on performing. And nobody is there at that time to see what is really going about. So do you think that they will call you on your bed by midnight and say, Ernest Akufo, come and see what we are doing? It's a lie, it's a fallacy. When you get to listen to President of South Africa again, I think in the beginning of my talk, I did say apparently the African leaders, they are getting out of slumber. Out of slumber because when you listen to what he's saying, he keeps saying it, confidently saying it, because when he says, he talks of this electricity project where we have about 600 million Africans not having electricity or electric energy. How can we then develop if we don't have electric energy? Impossible. Because take the case of Cameroon, small and medium-sized enterprises cannot develop. It is an enterprise, right? Yes, at times there are power outages here. If you don't have a powerful generator, we wouldn't have been doing this program.
And solar energy is expensive.
And solar energy is expensive. Yeah, because the people think that alternative sources of energy are cheap. I don't want to believe so. Even green energy too is expensive. So I want to think that on that standpoint where President Ramaphosa is talking, he knows what he's talking about, and this is the time. I think the next AU summit should brainstorm on all of what, and then when he keeps telling us that when we get back, we will tell the people what we went to these summits for. It's all telling, because the people want to get the feedback of what did you bring back from Paris. What did you bring back from Paris? And they'll have to tell the people. And this is an opportunity, I think, for Africa to wake up, because by the next summit, it's in 2 years in Paris, right? As President Macron did say. But I think before the Paris summit, they'll be going to the US for another summit. So do African leaders keep going to summits, listening to the same old song and coming back to their own continents and doing nothing, or they organize themselves at the AU summit and say this is the time? The 52 or 3 African nations, can we get out from slumber? Exactly. Can we get out from slumber? We don't have electric energy. What do we do to make it possible, rather than always going listening to people and then they make unfulfilled promises? I think it doesn't serve any purpose.
Thank you, Ernest Akufo. Isidore Parkwom, I want to remind us that we still have one more except to watch, just one, that of President William Ruto, still articulating on the fact that Africa needs to be respected. He did not say that we are not beggars, but he said Africa needs to be respected. I want to get your perspective again, because we have the impression that only presidents from English-speaking nations are speaking out, but we hear President Cyril Ramaphosa. I must say that he is really close to President Denis Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of Congo, because I remember when I was in Congo, most of the time they usually exchange visits. They have a very cordial relationship. But we also hear President Denis Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of Congo, with a population of not up to 3 million, population of about 4 million, speaking out clearly, saying that and telling the world leaders that you guys promised to be sending us $100 billion US every year, and you've not been doing that. Does that also show a sign that French-speaking African countries are ready to face the West?
When you follow the statement, I believe that those presidents are political tank criers. If they really want to do it, if they are really practicing politicians, I don't want to say that they are like portray a kind of excellent mediocrity in world politics. The West promised us 600 million to develop our own dams. He mentioned a dam in Congo that can generate electricity for almost 12 or 15 African nations. Why should somebody promise you on what you have? It is a simple logic. If it's not madness, I have something that you are promising that you come and help me develop it. What is your interest to help me to develop it if you are in the world of globalization? Boris mentioned the transfer of technology. When our countries give scholarship to students to go and learn abroad, what do they learn there? Those engineers. If I learn from Brother Akufo that they cannot transfer you technology, you steal it and come with it. So that is simply to tell us that the white man for over years have been cheating us. We mean that instead of giving us what we need in terms of education for us to develop our place, they keep on holding the secret so that they come back and do it at a very higher rate or a cutthroat action.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're getting me.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Congo just have about 4 million people. Do you know when Congo have crisis and there was war, how UN participated in that place? You know, when our researchers go abroad, if I write an article and publish and say that the law of minerals, as you were calling the name Tatiana, I've never heard them say I'm going to speak. That are there, yeah. And they will not say, okay, please, since these minerals are there, just come and really explain in the conference. We'll take care of your flight, we'll take care of your living, we'll even pay you some money, but so that come back.
Of course, they are not even going to let you understand that you have lithium.
And when you go now, you explain it that, okay, lithium in this town in Congo is like this, is more than 5,000 tons that can explode and do this and that. The nice thing the ambassador that, okay, go to that village, give pipe bomb water, go to that village, generate electricity, even give solar panel energy stuff, and then you now say that, wow, these guys are really with us. And when they give like that, they go and stand now and say they are mediating for peace, they are tapping and going. They'll give you bread and then they tap out what we call the ray fufu corn that we use in and kati, but they're giving you bread without a chocolate inside. So it means that what? They are exploiting us, and we have the African Union. I will insist that AU is a dog that does not bite, does not bark, but
they are still the ones funding the African Union. You know that.
They are the Africans are the people.
They are the ones funding the African Union.
If Africa wants to stand up, we should form a common bloc. If anybody wants to say it's a Pan-Africanist, we should all solicit for African Union, have our currency, have our standing army. We should disconnect having funds from the world. Why can Africa not have their own bank? Why can Africa not have a unique currency? Why can Africa not have a unique standing soldier? But we say the way to fund borrow all money to build our dams. More than 600 people in Africa not having energy. Here in Mention 4, they say it can generate electricity for even Central and West Africa. Have we generated it? Yeah. We're digging hills in Mevele and we're digging hills in Mevele and Lompanda. What is coming out there? Since we made billions have gone either. What is coming out
500 billions.
What is coming out from there when there is Mention 4 that you can just do like that and things happen? It's because of egotism, selfishness, self-centeredness. African leaders are political criminals by nature. We should be honest. All what they're saying there, they're making those things so that they have the support of the multitude. So that when they come for another election, they say, no, this man going to France and told Macron to his face. That's hypocrisy. You cannot win my mind. If we are Pan-Africanists, we should solicit for a strong African Union where they are not traitors. Because some of these politicians, they go behind, they say, you see, this man was saying like this. If you go like this, in order to maintain themselves in power, they are traitors. That is why the AU is not functioning.
Let's get the perspective of Boris Kwekam. Can we say that Africa is paying the price for the inability or the lack of political will to harness and to develop the natural resources we have at our disposal?
Unfortunately, that's the reality. Because, for instance, let's take the case of electricity. He's talking about dams, building a dam. If you build a dam in Menchum, the other problem will be they will not just stop at building the dam. They will also finance the transportation of the energy from that dam to Yaoundé. So, after begging for the dam, we'll be begging for the transportation. And
maybe even the management of the dam.
Definitely, because we don't have the human resource. Or maybe we have, but they have all gone abroad.
Or even they don't want to use them. We prefer to use mediocre human resources.
Definitely. For instance,
most of our technicians, they are engineers. What they do is that they bring the white man. I know politicians in this country who are businessmen. They go to the parliament, to the senate, director, ministers. They use their brothers to be their engineers. What is happening is that most of our engineers, they relegate them They bring in the white man, China, franc, and put in front. We go into a construction that's going to take 1 million, they take 5 million. They know that, okay, see, I'm signing the thing that they take this amount, and then at the end of the day, this is what I have, this is what you have. Because if you our partner with the Cameroonian, one day they will expose you when business collapse. That's the reason. Not that we have engineers, we have them.
The other truth is this. For instance, you hear about scholarships. Students being granted scholarship to go to China, to go to France, to go to the United States, to go to Morocco up here,
and Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt,
and even to go to
scholarships,
India and South Africa and South Korea.
Yeah.
Scholarships. That's what is the process. You organize a competition, and then you organize a competition, and then you select the best students in the country, and then after selecting the best students in that country, in that domain, they travel abroad, and then when they reach abroad, they are being given a scholarship. They're given a scholarship to travel abroad. That's the reality of our context. For instance, after winning this international competition, we were offered a series of scholarships in France. Okay, given the context where I have a newspaper, I'm not able to survive. Given the context where you have a series of projects, you cannot implement them. Given the present context whereby you have been well trained, at the Advanced School of Mass Communication, we are well trained, despite the realities. But now you're looking at the media landscape. Will I stay here? Will I stay here? Many students in this country are fighting to go abroad because of one simple reason. €1 is 650 francs CFA. That's the only reason. If you work in Europe as a journalist and you earn 200,000 francs, I don't think people will travel. People travel for opportunities abroad. But how can we create those opportunities locally in Africa? For instance, when I heard that the president of the Republic of Cameroon was traveling to France with a delegation, I just thought about the frais de mission. Imagine the money. Now, all other African countries traveling to that very same France for this summit, imagine how much money this could have created to create a school based maybe in Angola, a technological school based in Angola, for instance. I just think that the African Union needs to summon a summit where African countries can call on European countries to travel to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, sit down and discuss these issues. Because when you leave your house and then you go in another person's house discussing an issue, you don't have any power. You are fragile. So another thing is this: if these countries from the West come to Africa and discuss these issues in Africa, and we talk about, they know our realities. Because when you walk across Europe in capital cities, you will just notice that you will not see this, USAID, COICA, this, that, like you see everywhere here
in Africa.
You don't see it. So it means that all the problems in this world are in Africa. That's what it means. So I just think that Cyril Ramaphosa, we are not talking about William Ruto here. We are talking about Cyril Ramaphosa because we are all shocked by his statement. It's a very shocking statement. But I instead think that William Ruto was really much more concrete.
And we are going to listen to him.
And he was really talking in a sense that I think that he's a true Pan-Africanist. And I also think that William Ruto is working in his country. Because you know that South Africa is not even an example because they are combating other Africans. In this sense. And I'm a good lover of South Africa. I love the country. Each time there's a ceremony at the South African embassy, I always go. Because I think that South Africa should be this country just like Nigeria. They need to take us forward. They need to really take us forward. And that's why I think that next time Cyril Ramaphosa should call these Western countries to Africa and make such a statement.
Thank you, Boris Landry. Let's get your missions now and watch. We have to watch President William Ruto Samoei. I think I've worked in the newsroom with Kenyans and South Africans, and I must tell you, these are guys who say it the way it is. I mean, when I was watching President William Ruto Samoei of Kenya addressing President Emmanuel Macron with a lot of frankness, saying it the way it is supposed to be said, it reminded me of my colleagues, some of my Kenyan colleagues that I want to greet while watching the program today, thinking about you, Michael Oduor, thinking about my very good friend, CEO of Live Streaming Kenya, Robert Kondingo, thinking about Claire Mutinji of the BBC, thinking about Lynette Bahati and Victor Monsieur. These are people who say the way it is when it comes to, discussing issues, or comes to choosing topics in the newsroom. These are people that don't talk with water in their mouths. And that is exactly what President William Ruto Samoei of Kenya did when he had the opportunity to have a tete-a-tete with President Emmanuel Macron. Let's watch.
We need a financial transaction tax at a global level where even countries like Kenya pay. We do not want anything for free. You will pay more eventually because you have a bigger economy. We will pay commensurate to our economy. And we want those resources controlled not by IMF and World Bank. Because IMF and World Bank, you have the final say. We don't have no say. We want another organization of equals, where you have as much say because you pay as much as we do because we also pay. That's the organization we are looking for. And that is why we are saying we need a new financial architecture where governance, where power is not on the hands of a few people. We can agree on the governance of the institution. We can agree on the sharing of power so that all of us have access to resources that go to making sure, number one, renewable energy. We invest in decarbonization. Number two, adaptation, mitigation, smart agriculture. Number three, restoring our planet, restoring our biodiversity, and making sure our carbon sinks work. This is what we are saying, and we would appreciate a little understanding. We want to be, we are talking the normal. If we continue talking the normal, Emmanuel, we will never solve this problem. Things are not going forward, they are going backwards. Tokenism, installment will not solve this problem. We have a much bigger problem than the installment we are discussing here will solve. You are not hearing us.
I will, if I may, I will answer you in 2 words to conclude. No, but
and let me just finish one more. When Ajay was saying 1 to 5 or 1 to 1, who is 1 and who is 5? Private sector versus who is 1 and who is 5?
$5 private sector mobilization for every dollar of money that comes in.
5 from private.
Surely, Ajay. How do you persuade the private sector to bring their money for public good? Private sector is driven by profit, my friend. I mean, unless you...
Okay, I see you guys are clapping for President William Ruto Samoei. I think you want to be the first to react?
No, let's...
Or Ernest, you want to be the first?
When I listen to President Ruto, I feel relieved because he speaks practically. He speaks with a lot of practicalities. When he talks of we should build a financial transaction tax, because anything that you get free is too expensive, and that is what the Western world wants to do to Africa. Most of the time they will tell you, all of these C2D projects we have in Africa or in Cameroon, they will tell you, okay, these are grants which are being given. How can you take your money in your country as if you have nothing to do with the money? You come and give us hundreds of billions, that is grants. Anything, as he rightly said, anything that is free is expensive. and it has the undertones when you have to pay back is very expensive. So I think what you have said is of utmost importance that we need. And look at the private sector. I think in every economy, it is the private sector that generates the income. The public sector is just spending. So we must have a strong private sector, and we must enable that private sector to be strong, because if the private sector isn't strong, unfortunately, in some African countries, I want to take the example of Cameroon, private sector, people will look at it to be the petty trades, the women who are doing buy and sell, informal sector. That is not the private sector we are talking about. The private sector is not the informal sector. It's not the small women who roast maize along the road. It's not the small call box doers. It's not the bikers. That is not the private sector we are talking about. We are talking about investments where people inject money, which generates income. I don't want to cite some of these multinationals which we have in Cameroon. That is the meaning of the private sector, which makes the economy booming. What are we doing in that direction? That is just what the president was saying.
So practically, Isidore Pacom, what makes William Ruto's speech different from that of Cyril Ramaphosa?
He talked with a lot of authority. He talked with a lot of, some candor. We talk with like a mature person. We want an organization of equal where we partake in sharing of administration, a financial transaction and architecture should be put on. It therefore means that you have not said, don't give me anything for free. Let us pay commensurate to our economy. If you are 10, you pay 10% of it. If we are 5, I pay 5% of it. It means that what? It is commensurate based on our economy. Not that I can that, okay, you promise me 600 million to build to generate electricity. It is like a kind of a mixed cacophony where we are dancing with word that we are not begging, but meanwhile we are begging. So this man is saying that, tell us, let us go into a win-win relationship.
Not 5
in 1 or 1 in 5. No. And in terms of administration, he put it clear that we are supposed to partake all of it, all of that. That is tell you that what William read there about the private sector, what he read there about equality in the global stage is a pertinent concern. I would not like somebody to tell me that you should give me 1 million or you promise me 1 million and go and develop this. Because when somebody gives, he dictates how the money will be used and control how it is being used. It means that what? You have opened a very large door for the person to penetrate and manage your affairs for you.
Thank you. Boris, I mean, when you look at the approach of William Ruto and the approach of Cyril Ramaphosa, what makes a difference?
I think they are saying the same thing, but just that one person is much more respectful than the other. They're really saying the same thing. And I also think that William Ruto is someone who is really sincere in his approach. You just have the feeling that he's not like into any political stuff. That he's not talking like that because it is politics. He's talking like that because that's who he is. That's the feeling I have. I think that from his speech, I came to realize that our driving force should be cooperation in Africa. African countries have to come together. For instance, I believe that in such a summit, even if some African countries are supposed to speak out, or to talk, or to address, I think that the president of the African Union should really come up and talk on behalf of the entire African continent. And the other thing is this: when I hear William Ruto speak, I also come to realize that if, for instance, we say that there's a big African engineering school to be created in Kenya, for instance, and the best in the whole in some African countries will travel to Kenya and benefit from a scholarship where they will learn engineering. That is practical. I think someone like this is a Pan-Africanist. That's what I have to say.
Okay, and Mr. Kufo, I think it's time for us to run up to this edition of the program 90 Minutes in Africa, using the words of President Cyril Ramaphosa, we are not beggars, and that is why we should not compete with one another for favors. from our former colonial masters. We are not beggars, and that is why we should not backstab each other to invite enablers to lord over our economic resources. We are not beggars. That is why we should take all the necessary measures to harness our natural and human resources for the development and the advancement of the people of Africa. We are not beggars, because the more we beg as a continent, the more we are going to have the characteristics of lack of initiative, lack of courage, lack of drive, and of course self-reliance. We are not beggars, and that is why we need to also teach our people about the numerous and the tons of mineral resources we have in the continent of Africa, and also teach them about technological transformation of all what we have in the continent of Africa. Time for me to thank our guests for coming. Thank you so much, Isidon Parkom, for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Ernest Akufo, for coming to the program.
It was a pleasure, but the take-home message should be very clear. Africa must unite.
Cooperate.
Yes,
definitely.
because if we don't harness, if we don't bring our resources together, both human, material, and natural resources together, we'll keep doing the same things we hear. We keep going to the summits and then making the same old narrating, the same old stories we're narrating. So Africa must stand up. The Nkrumahs failed. The Gaddafis, they failed, and the rest, they failed, and Sankaras failed. Does this new generation of African presidents and politicians want to fail? I don't think so. They should stand up, and unite. I think all will be fine.
Thank you so much, Boris, for coming.
Thank you so much. And I think that I would like to say that I believe that in Africa we have the education. But right now, what is lacking in most African countries, from most African leaders, is the strategy, is the intelligence. That is what we need.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we draw the curtains for today's edition of your favorite Pan-African show, 90 Minutes in Africa, produced by Romeo Ngacha. I want to thank my production team, Romeo Ngacha, coordination of Kumudu and supervision of Brian Tambe. At the microphone for presentation, I am Bo Elvis. Thanking you for watching. Have a wonderful day as you keep watching programs of My Media Prime. Bye-bye.